Alright, you're welcome to this lesson. My name is Desmond Oben. I am an instructor at Udemy and a JavaScript superhero. Alright, very good. So I'm not going to waste your time here. Alright, let me just take you through this app. I'm going to log in now on my mobile, and also I'm going to log in or create an account here. So let's say person@gmail.com, and then I'll just put some password. Then let's register. Okay, very good. Let's close that. So this is a new account. So here I currently have no list in my board. Now I'm not going to show you all the functionalities of this app as I don't want this video to be long. But we have a profile here that you can update the information. For example, if we do that, create, and it's going to be updated successfully. Very good. If you click on that profile, it's going to change the photo. If you click here, it's going to change. Very good. You can update it. If you go to the update, you can also see it updated there. Now you can add a list board. You can edit it. You can update the title. Now if you click on a to-do, you can expand and collapse it. You can edit it and save it. You can delete it to do, see the animation. Very good. You can also click here to collapse everything. You see the hover effect. You can expand all and collapse all at once. See the cool animations. If we add another board, see the animation when it adds smooth. You're going to learn all of this. You can delete a board. If we click on that, it's going to add. Very good. If you delete, it's going to delete. If you delete again, it's going to delete. You can add more if you want. Now if we go to the chats page, you have the users that has all the users in the database, and then you have the chats where only users you've chatted with would appear there. For now, I'm just going to create another account on my mobile, and then just keep watch on the users list. Bam, you can see the user pops up there, which is good. Now you see the users online because the list prioritizes the online users. The online users come to the top. Now if we click there and start chatting with newbie2, now if we go to the chat, you can see the loader. If we refresh, you see the loading. It looks very good. Going back to the chat, you see the loader again, and then you can start sending the message to the newbie because you started the chat. Very good. Now let me reply with my mobile. You see the pop-up hello there as well from my mobile, and you see the new message. Now I'm gonna send again. How are you? And hope you are good with the scores. Very good. I received it here on my mobile, and I'm going to reply soon. But what if this superhero guy is in the tasks list page, and then when I reply, you see a new message at the top, and you can see the ping here. Very good, which simply means I have a new message. Now if I click on it, you can see it there, and you can see the message. Very good. So that's pretty much it. You can start another new chat with Oben Desmond, even though he's not online, and you can still send him a message. Hello, you're offline. and you can see his information, the profile picture, you can see the last message. There's just a lot of things that I can't really show you here in this introduction video, but you're gonna learn all of this, understand the core concepts of React.js and Typescript, build React components, manage state and handle events, apply TypeScript to enhance code quality, maintainability, and developer productivity, implement actions, reducers, and stores for efficient state management. You can understand the principles of state management using react-redux toolkit actually. You're going to develop a feature-rich application with Redux integration. You're going to learn how to set up a Firebase project for real-time data management with Firestore. You're going to learn how to implement authentication for secure chat access, create a real-time chat application with messaging features, customize and style components and layouts with Tailwind classes, create modern and responsive user interfaces using Tailwind. There's just too much you're gonna learn here, and in this you can go through the course objective in the course description, but the 5 powerful thing that you're going to learn, 5 powerful technologies, which is React.js, TypeScript, Tailwind, Firebase, and Redux toolkit, and even Git. So there are 6. These 6 powerful tools, you're gonna learn them efficiently here. See, the UI is pretty good, and it's Tailwind. If we inspect here, you can see the current state of the app. You can see all of this state here. This is Redux. Very good. You're gonna learn how to set up all of this using the Redux toolkit. You're gonna know how to write code, good practice code with React. You're gonna learn how to efficiently create components. You're gonna learn many things. Okay, all you need to do is just enroll and let's go. So see you on the other side, superhero. Okay, very good. Now, React is just a JavaScript library for web and native user interfaces, as you can see here on their website. And if we browse in, you can basically see how it is used. And you can see that the basic building block here is just a function. You have this function that takes an input and then normal HTML here, which we call JSX. And yeah, if you have some time, you can just go ahead and go to their website and then you can get more information about it. Okay, but what you just want to know is React is just a library which is an addition onto JavaScript to help you build better user interfaces quicker. Very good. Now let's go right here. You want to create a folder here and then open up the folder on VS Code. Now we're going to open our terminal with Command J or Control J on Windows, and then we want to do npx create react app and then template TypeScript. So this is going to create a React application in TypeScript. Now let's enter. Oh, we have to specify the name of the app. So we're going to do npx create react app and then let's call it. Actually, if you are doing this, all right, you want to specify the name of the app. I already created a folder here, but what I'm just going to do here is I want to do dot, which simply means create the project in this folder called React TypeScript Superhero. But for you, you might do the same though, but if you put the name here, name of app, it's going to create a new folder called name of app. Okay, but we don't want to do that now, so let's just do the dot. All right, while it's installing, let me just give you a brief introduction to the Tailwind CSS. If we go in here now, if you've done CSS before,
this is basically the same. Okay, I understand that most of you might be beginners. Okay, this is very much the same as CSS, but it is better because we can build user interfaces faster and style them even without getting to style.css, without opening or without creating much styles. Okay, as you can see here, we can basically do this MD flags and so on and so forth. I'll just go ahead and click on the get started so that you see. We're going to install it, but let's go first right here. You can see here that normally this is what we would do. We would have the HTML here and then assign classes to it, and then we can now do this display flags, max width, and so on and so forth. Now in Tailwind, what we can do is simply have our element here. Instead of doing padding 6, we could just say P6 here. But this 6 doesn't necessarily mean like 6 pixels. All right, we're going to go through all of this, but this is saying padding 6 and max width small. SM here is a specific size in pixels as well. MX auto is the margin auto. BG white is simply saying background white. So doing this, you can basically style all your application in your HTML. Okay, this prevents you from moving from one file to another and searching for styles and trying to implement all sorts of things. Rounded XL here simply is on the border radius. And again, I'm going to take you through all of this. I'm just trying to give you an introduction. All right, so yeah, if we try to check up here, hover, focus. So for us to be able to create this effect here, we could do something like hover and then column. So this is how we specify the hovering state, and then we want to say its background should be sky 700. Sky 700 is the color again. And yeah, you could do the hover, you could do the focus, the first child. Basically, if you have time, you can still take out your time to go through the document again and just to see how they're using these things. And again, you can see small here is like 640 pixel, and this is how you apply it on medium screen, which simply means on screens that have a minimum width of 768 pixel, it's going to give it this width 32. On larger screens, it's going to give it 48. And you can come up with this if you write these sorts of code. Very good. And I'm going to take out time to explain this as we apply the styles. All right, don't worry. If we go on down here to maybe let's say flexbox here, flexbox basics, you might be familiar with this and you might not be familiar with flexbox way of styling, but flexbox is just a way of styling your application really quickly and make it a lot more responsive. Okay, so you can do this flex, which simply means display flex in normal CSS, and flex row is like saying let the flex direction be row. And yeah, the items are currently on a row. You can have them in column, you can have them in column reverse, and so on and so forth. You also have grid here, and basically grid is helping us display items on a grid. You can see 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 on a grid, and this is how you do it with Tailwind. This grid here simply display grid in normal CSS, and grid calls for, you're saying the column should be 4 1 2 3 4. It is that easy. The gap here is the spacing between the elements. All right, so doing this is going to give you this style here, which is going to take time if you're trying to do normal CSS. Okay, I'm just trying to show you how handy this is when using Tailwind, and it's not like Bootstrap. Okay, Tailwind is not like Bootstrap. It's not like material design, but this gives us a lot more ability to customize our code. If you see a website built with Bootstrap, you would know that it is Bootstrap. All right, because they already have kind of building blocks and maybe colors set up that you can use. They have their buttons in their own design and so on and so forth. But with this, you can literally create your own design, and you can use this to build custom user interfaces. Because in the job market, or maybe if you're working in a project, that's what you would do. You wouldn't use Bootstrap, except you guys just decided to use Bootstrap. But if you're working on a project, you guys normally have some user, like some Figma file, some user interface design that you want to build, and it's usually on Figma or on Adobe XD or any user interface tool, any design tool. All right, and you're going to build your application based on that file or based on that design, and it's pretty much custom. All right, so what I'm doing here is I want your minds to be open, and you should be able to build custom user interfaces. Very good. So it is done. Now we want to cd into the React Typescript and npm start. Very good. So this is your React application. Now just bear with me. If you're a pro already, okay, and you know how to set up this, let's explain the folder structure so that the beginners here can understand. So basically your node modules is going to hold your modules. This node modules folder is going to hold the modules you install into your application. Okay, and modules are just basically some JavaScript files that do specific functionalities. All right, so for example, you can see this here. It is a JavaScript file and it can do something, and we are simply reusing them to help us build our project faster. So anytime you install any module, it's going to be stored here. Now in the public, we have various files like the favicon, which is like the icon at the top here. This one is called the favicon. We have the logo here, manifest, and this. The most important one here is the index HTML. Okay, this one is where we're going to render our React application. Let's quickly hide the terminal. Command J or Control J. So this is your basic HTML file, and this element is the most important element here with ID root, because our React app will be rendered here. And let's just go ahead and rename our title to React Typescript Superhero. Very good. Let's delete some of these comments here that don't make any sense. And actually they make sense, don't mind me. So yeah, we want it to be as simple as this. Very good. And then before we go into our source file here, this git ignore is going to store files or folders that are ignored that we don't want to push to GitHub. For example, the node modules. The reason why we don't want to push this is because we can simply regenerate them. Okay, and the other ones as well, /build, PMP, and so on and so forth, the env, local development test. So we want to ignore all of these files so that we shouldn't be able to push them to GitHub. So package log, this one you don't really have to bother about it because it is auto generated. It's generated from your package.json file. even this one, you don't need to bother much about it because it just holds information concerning your app, the name of your app, the version of your app, private, true, and so on and so forth. I don't know some of these things. But one important thing here is a script where you can start your application, you can build your application, you can test, you can eject, and so on and so forth. The ones we're going to use here is the start and the build, where we just did the npm start just now because the start here is in the script, and that's started our application. So you could do npm run build. It's going to build your app where you can host your application online, as you would see we're going to do here. All right, and you can also put custom scripts here. And then the readme just contains information concerning your application, and you can customize it or you can leave it as it is. But if it is like pretty much a production app, you would want to describe some things here. Okay, and the tsconfig is holding configuration concerning your TypeScript. All right, JSX, Reactjs, no emit true, and it's going to target the source folder where we're writing the TypeScript code. Allow JS true, which simply means you can also create JavaScript files like something.js. All right, and you can incorporate that with the TypeScript files as well. So this is just holding configurations concerning your TypeScript, and it's auto-generated. Very good. So if you have been taking my courses, you would know that I always like to delete the source so that you can learn more and see how we come out with it. Okay. So basically what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and delete the source. Move it to trash and then create src. Now in here, we want to create an index.ts and we want to create our root application app.tsx, our root component actually. Now for our root component, we're just gonna import react from react and then function app, which is going to return h1 here, hello world, and then let's export it as default app. Very good. Save that. And if we go to our index.ts here, the reason why we're exporting here anyways is that we should be able to use it or import it to any other component or file, like we're going to need it here. All right, this is our root component where our app would be brought together. So in the index.ts, what we want to do here is we want to first import react from react, and then we want to do import react DOM as well from react DOM / client. Then we want to import our app from app. Now basically what we want to do again is to target the react DOM dot, we want to create root dot, we want to render as well. Create root here is going to target our root application, not actually this one, the root div, you remember the HTML, so it's going to target this. So we want to do the normal document.get element by id called root here, and then we want to render the app into that root element. currently it's already giving us errors here. One thing you should know is TypeScript is strict, and that's helping us to prevent more errors. So if we hover on here, it's going to say argument of type HTML element or null is not assignable to parameter of type element and document. So what we want to do is we want to render this element here as an element. So we're going to say as that. So you saw how I just copied this there. So we don't really need to store this in your head. Okay. And now what's wrong with this? App refers to value. Oh, oopsie. We need this to be TSX. Oops. So let's rename this to be TSX so that we're able to render HTML or a component. TS is more like doing custom TypeScript files and so on. TSX simply means we're going to do some component into it or some HTML into it. All right, same as JSX. Okay, even though JS can take, like a normal JS file can take an HTML, but TypeScript is weird. All right, save that. If we go back here, it should work. Very good. So what we want to do next is we have everything set up except that we don't have Tailwind yet. Now if we go to our Tailwind here, all right, let's see. If you just go into here, let's go to installation here. Now we want to install Tailwind, and there are a couple of ways you can install Tailwind. You can use CDN for plain HTML like so, but what's always very good that goes with React is the post CSS one. Installing Tailwind CSS as a post CSS plugin is the most seamless way to integrate it with build tools like Webpack and so on and so forth, and we have Webpack. So firstly, we want to copy this. I'm taking you through this, okay, so that you should be able to do it yourself. You should be able to search for a solution and implement it. So I'm not just gonna hide that screen and just type on the terminal here like I know everything. Okay, so let's paste that. While it's working out, we want to do npx tailwind css init. Paste it again. It's gonna create something for us. Create a tailwind css config file. Tailwind config. Is it here? Wait, let me see. Let's refresh. Very good, it is here. Nice. So let's go back here. Now we have to create a post css config.js. So let's go on and create it. Paste that name, and then we have to copy all of this into it. So I'll just click on here, copy and paste, save it. The next thing is in our Tailwind config.js, we need to add this into it. Copy, go here, replace it with this. But now we are doing TypeScript, okay? So here, it's looking out for any Tailwind command. All right, so we wanted to do the TypeScript files as well. So look at the TypeScript files. So it's gonna look at the TS and the TSX files, and we also just want to include JSX, even though we're not doing HTML and so on. But yeah, let's just go ahead and include them. So, but this is basically saying it's going to look into the source, it's at any of the folders, it's going to take out all the files, the .html, .js, .jsx, .ts, .tsx files that are using Tailwind. Very good, save that. And we want to create a main.css file. And before we do that, we are going to go into our source and create a folder, assets, where we're going to put in our assets. And the name doesn't really matter. You can do global.css, you can do main.css. It depends on you, okay? And we just want to copy this here, paste it, save, close it, and then npm run dev. So that's basically starting your app. So let's just quickly check again. So I'm just going to go to this one, stop it, and then before I restart it, I'm going to quickly write some class name. Let's say text blue, let's say 500, save it. Now let's restart it. Okay. It doesn't seem to be working. Save this one. Oh, actually we have to link our global CSS to our index, which is our root file. So the index tsx here simply helps to connect our root application with our entry point here, the root. Okay, so we have to link the style either to the index or the root app, but I'll prefer here. So let's import /assets/global.css, save, and let's see. Very good. There you go. It is working. Now I'll just close this, close this, close this, close this one. Let's say text 600. Let's say 900. Okay. Text bold. Save that. Very good. So it is working, and basically the steps for you installing that Tailwind here, you just need these two files, Tailwind config, post CSS config, and you need the global style where you have this here. You can add other styles down here, but you want this, and then at the end you want to link it to your root app or your index. Okay, your index is the topmost file, because we have the app inside of it. But if you put it here in the app tsx, it's still going to work. Okay, save that and save that, and that's pretty much it. That's how you add Tailwind. That's how you have this React here, and we're all set up to go. Now see you on in the next lesson, superhero. All right, very good. Now what we are going to do is, if you can take a look here, we have different pages. So it is a good practice to separate your pages from your components. All right, now what's the difference between your page and your component? Now in React, don't worry, I'm going to explain this. All right, so in React we have components. For example, this white box here, this login box can be a component. A component can be reused, like we're using this in two places here. All right, this user chat here can be a component as well. This chat can be a component, but then this is your chat page. So your page has many components, and this is your task list or your list board page. This one is your login and registration page. All right, so let's go on right here. So first off, we want to create a folder here. It's called pages, And we also want to create a folder, not inside here, so click here, components as well. Now if we take a look at this app before we start creating any page, this app, you can see here that is divided into 3 sections. You're importing React, and then you have the function, and then you have the export here. And again, said it before that you're exporting this because you want to import it somewhere. Now we're going to be creating pages that we're going to later on import into the app.tsx file so that we can create our route directories. Okay, now you can export as default, and you can just export as an object like this, app. The main difference between these two is if you export as an object, firstly you can export multiple functions here. In case you have 2 components in one file, let's say app number 2, then you can export app 1 and app 2 as so. But with export default, you can only export a single function. Okay, now if we comment this, save it, we go to our tsx file here, you would see that this is crying out because we're importing as default. So if we export in an object, we also have to import in an object, and we can import app2 as well, as so. So importing as an object, we can import many. Same thing with the exporting as an object, we can export many. And exporting as default, we can export only a single one. Importing as default, we can import only a single one as well. But for now, let's stick to the previous one. So Control Z. I'm just showing you, especially the beginners here. So let's delete this one and delete this one. Save this. Now if we create our login page.tsx here, quickly set it up, import React. Now we can create the function with the normal function keyword, or we could use the arrow function as well. Login page return, let's say login for now. I want to export default login page, save it. Now we want to import this into our app.tsx. I'm just gonna put this here in a div, app, not app actually, login page, and save it. If we go to our application here, and close that one here, yes, we just have login currently showing. Very good. Now in our login page, if you take a look at the design again on the screens, we have this gradient and we have that login. So basically we want to have some background and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we want to create a container that's first off taking the full height of our current viewport screen, our browser. Okay, and we're going to handle the background later on, but let's do that. So in our login page, if we go to our class name here, we can do height to be 100 view height. So normally in Tailwind, if we go to the website here, let's just search for height. You can do things like this: H96, H80, 64. For full height, 48, or you can do H full, okay, or you can do H screen, exactly. But if you have a custom height, you can do H and then the square bracket, and then you can put in the size here, like 32 RAM. Because what we want to do here is we want to put a custom height of 100 view height. which is what you can currently see in your browser. So putting custom elements, you want to put the square brackets, but if you just want to reuse what Tailwind offers, you could do H8 or age full here. Okay, so now we want to say, first I'm just gonna give this a BGC of blue, and let's say 600, and then if we say age 8 here and save it. All right, currently that's what we have. If we say age full, that's what it's going to be. But if we say custom height to be 100 view height, it's going to give us this. Very good, which is what we want. Okay, so for now, let's have this one. And then what we could do is, let's go ahead and start creating the white form. Okay, now if you notice again in the design, you always want to set your eyes on your design so that you can stay on track. You can see that we're using these inputs in many places. The input text field, same thing with the buttons. So we want to create what we call reusable component. Okay, so that we don't keep recreating the buttons and the inputs. So that simply means we're going to create an input component that we can reuse throughout. All right, so for now, let's just go ahead and create a div here. Let's say div, and then this div is going to have a class. So you could do a shortcut like this, div.bgWhite. So it's just going to give a class of white, which is like white background. I don't know why my Tailwind extension is not working, but in the next lesson I'm just going to refresh it. Right, for now, yeah, we want a white background here. Okay, we want padding to be 6, and we want a minimum height of 150 pixel. All right, and if we save that, you're going to have something like this. Now what we want to do is, I'm just going to put this again in another container. So cut this out, do a div.width full here, and paste this one on. So this is going to be our login. So we want it to be width full, and in here we're going to put an H1 here, text white. So let's just put login in it for now, but we are going to customize it so that it can take both login and register. And now if we save, it's going to look like this, which is not bad. It's actually bad. So for now, yeah, let's have that white, and let's have it centered. So text center. This is like saying text align centered. Okay, and we want to do font bold, and we want to increase the size of the font text for Excel, and save it. All right, it's going to look like that. Now back here, so what we want now is to start putting our inputs here. So first we're just going to create the input as it is, and then we can make it customizable and we can convert it into a component. So if we have this input as it is, it's going to take in a type here. Let's say text for now, and then let's go ahead and style it. So firstly, we're going to do flex 1 here, which is simply saying take the whole space that's given onto you. We want a transparent background. So flex 1 is like saying take the rest of the space that's given. Okay, so that simply means it's going to be with respect to its container, and it's only going to work if its container is at display flex. We're doing this here because that's what we are going to do in the container, this one. That's what we're going to do here. So for now, let it be. You would see the effect. And then we have BG transparent. We have let's give some border too here, and we have border gray 300. So this is like the width of the border or the thickness of the border, and this is the color of the border. So border gray, and then we want it rounded, which is specifying the border radius. Rounded full. Save it. If we try to check it, that's it. Let's give it some padding. Now, when it comes to padding, we can say px3, which is the horizontal padding, and we can say py2, which is, or py1 actually, which is the vertical padding. All right, and let's give it a sample placeholder here. Enter name, save. Very good. It's going to be like this. Currently, if we say placeholder gray 300 here, let's style the placeholder color. Save it. Very good. So we want it like that. Now we want this field to be able to fill whatever space is given to it. Currently the flex one is not working, but once we do a display flex here, you would see. So if we say flex save, and boom, you see it's currently taking all of the space that it can take. All right, but that's too much though. So let's say flex, and then flex call is specifying the flex direction. Like in normal CSS, you would say flex direction column. So that's what we're doing here. And let's save it. I'm just going to duplicate this input field here. I'll make it into 3. And this is how it's going to look like. Very good. Now we want some gap between them. So let's go back to this. Take out the terminal, Command J. So we want some gap here. We can say gap 3. It's going to give spacing between the elements, which is what we want. All right. Currently, if we inspect this, it is going to be good on mobile. You see how it is already responsive because we're using flex, right? And we set flex 1 for the input here because we want it to only take the space that's available. So when this reduces, then it's going to reduce as well. So, but we don't want this white container to take the full width in medium screens and going upward. All right, so we want to say in this container here, we want to say for medium screens, the text should be 6XL, and save that. So currently, if we go to our tailwind.config here, all right, I made some configurations, all right, that we can add here when it concerns the screens. And this is when you wanna add some more functionality to your Tailwind. If you go into your Tailwind here, let's say you want to do some custom theme, all right, you want to customize, because they have some default sizing for their MDs and their smalls and their extra large. Okay, so we could pretty much customize them. Let me see, theme configuration. Very good. So this is their default. Their small or their SM is 480, their large is 900, their MD is 700. So you can also customize the blue color. This is all the default. Okay, so if you want to customize it, you just need to put that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste my own screens here inside of the theme. Bam. And now my small is still 480, medium is still 768, but my large is still 12, XL is 1440. Let me see, their large is 900 and 1440, so we changed the large. So let's save that. We are also going to need some colors, okay? So in the extend, you can put in colors here. You can even put in default. You can specify and modify the default blue color, the default purple. But I already prepared some colors which we are going to use. So we just call it my blue, and then you want to put it. This is after I did some research. So normally before you start building your app, you should do some planning for it. Okay, very good. So I'm going to show you how you can use this though. So when you save that, if we come back here, this is too big. I don't know why. Okay, on normal screens it is good, but when we pass on that, it is bigger. Anyways, let's go. We're going to fix it. So close that for now. So actually, let's do this on the login. So text for XL, but on the login text it should be 6XL in medium. Okay, very good. It's back to normal. Let me see. We want it text white, text center, font bold for XL, and medium screen 6XL. We also want some margin bottom to be 10. Save that. So there's some spacing here. Very good. Now back to the white container here. We want it flex column gap 3 BG white. I'm going to give it width full here as well. That's because we want it to take the size of its container as well. Okay, we're going to give it width full, but we want it to, if we give this border 2 and border red, I just like giving it border so that we can see its layout. So that's how it looks like. It is taking the whole width. So, but we don't want you to take the whole width. We only want you to take the whole width on mobile. Okay, so we're going to say on MD, we want the width to be a custom width 455 pixel. Save that, and boom, it looks like this. But if we go on mobile, as we reduce it, it's going to take all the width, which is what we want. Okay, very good. So we want that, and yeah, so back on here again, we want it to take the full width of its container no matter what. So it's just saying this div here should continuously take the full width of this container, and this container is either going to be full width on mobile, and then on MD going upwards it's going to be 450. Now the way Tailwind is designed, it's moving from mobile going upward into larger screens. So if you just put a normal styling here, know that it's from mobile going upward. If you want a different styling for maybe tablet, then maybe the sizing of tablet is the medium screen, you're going to specify medium. So from the medium going up to the large to the extra large, they're going to take this width. Meanwhile, the mobile is going to take this one. The mobile here consists of the small. All right, mobiles are normally like 480 coming up to maybe 500, 600. You get what I'm trying to say, right? So if we don't specify, if we just put it like that, I'll close this one. If we just put width small, then it's going to take every size below the MD. So if we don't put the MD, then every size is going to have the width full. But if we specify MD here, is from MD and above, which is like 768 pixel and above. So 768 pixel and below are going to have this stylings, this style, the width full. Very good. You know, for the normal CSS, you will need to create the media query and stuff, right? That's why I like Tailwind, because you don't need to bother yourself about all those stuff. You can just do this here. So very good. Back to our white box here. One thing we want to do again is to give it a rounded extra large. Rounded here is the border radius. Okay, save that. All right, I'm just going to take out this border. Very good. Okay, now we want it to be centered, but before that we also want to give some shadow to it. Around that, we're going to do drop shadow to be XL. And very good. Now we want to center it. So if we go to this container up here, currently we're giving it blue background and this height. We want to do display flex. So let's do flex and then items center. It's like saying align item center in normal CSS. Justify content center. And we want a padding of 10. Very good. Now we have this. So our login page is already coming into play. If we test it on mobile, here, it's not bad. It's not bad. Very good. If we test it on an iPad, it is still good. It is pretty responsive. All right, now that our basic styling is set up, we want to start implementing some things like the input component so that we can continuously reuse it. So we're going to continue in our next lesson. See you on Superhero. Alright, so just go to your components and you want to create an input.tsx file here. Import React and const. We want to call it input. And anytime we call this component, we just want to return some input. And bam, export default input. Very good. Now if we save this and then just go to our login page, and instead of doing all of this, we just delete it. We just need to do input and then save it. Come here. Let's duplicate that. I'll make it in a tray. Very good. So it's going to look like this, but you see that it's not custom. Each time we output this, it's not custom. Okay, we cannot reuse it because it's basically giving us the same thing. For us to be able to make it custom, we need to take in inputs, what we call props in React. All right, now for us to define props here, normally I think you should already be familiar with React. All right, now in React, Typescript is a bit more complicated because every props we pass in at the top here, it's going to need us to define the type. Okay, so that's going to lead us to creating a type here. Let's call it input props. Basically type is the real TypeScript. So all of this is just normal JavaScript, normal React. This is where TypeScript is coming in. So firstly, you want a name of the input field. You want a value, which is optional. So we want to use the question mark. String. For now, let's just comment this part out. And then let's receive it here as well. Now, if we have this is not all what we need though. Okay, we're going to add some more. But how do we use this then? Normally in React we take in props, but we need to give the type. Props is declared, but its value is never read. Parameter props implicitly has an any type. We don't want it to have an any type. We want it to have this type. So we want to put a column and we want to put the input props. Very good. So that's going to let us be able to pass in a name and some couple of more values, which we're going to add later on. And that simply means we could put in, instead of enter name here, we could use the curly brackets and say enter plus props dot. Once you do props dot, you see you're going to see the name here already, and that's the power of TypeScript, because we said we typed the props to have this shape or this structure, right? So it's gonna have the name and it's gonna have a couple of properties which we're going to add. And if you add some property, let's say we add this value and then we do the dot, you see that you can never make an error in choosing that. And if you put something else, maybe name2, it's going to shout at you. So it says property name2 does not exist on type input props, which is what you defined here. But in normal JavaScript, this would tell you nothing. You only just find out that your code's not working. Okay, we want to do this name. This is going to let us be able to pass in a name property here. You see the input is already read, and if you hover, one thing with TypeScript and React is you always want to hover, okay, to get an idea about your error. It says property name is missing in the type that, so you need name. And why is it giving us just name? Because we said the value is optional by putting the question mark. That simply means you need to pass in a name property here. If we say name, then this one should be password. And let's just delete this one for now. Save it. Now, it shouldn't. Okay, now it's saying enter name, enter password. Because in the input we are reusing it here. Let's put some space. Save. Very good. Now we could either do this string concatenation, or we could use the string literals. Enter, and then we're gonna do props.name. And now we don't want to keep doing props.name, props.value, because if we have like maybe 8 values here, we would need to use them with the props dot prop dot. This one is specifically object destructuring, and destructuring is simply a way of allowing us to be able to pick out some properties out of an object or an array. So we just want to pick out the name out of the props object so that we could just reuse them like name, value as they are, which is still working. Very good. Now we want to accept a couple of properties. The type should be optional and it should be a string. We want the we want an unchanged. This one is going to be a function, and the way you define the type for a function here, this function is going to take in an event that's going to have an any type, and then it's going to return void. We want the class name because we want to be able to pass in custom styles to our input. So we want class name, which is optional and should be string. We want on key down as well. It's optional too because we don't want to do it for every input. Any is going to return void. That's simply saying it is a function. We also want a disabled, optional as well. This one should be boolean. Very good. So we can now take out all of these properties from the props as well. Very good. Now we're saying the type should have a default of text. Okay, if we say type equal text here, we're just giving it a default, and we're going to take in the name, the value, and change class name, and key down disabled. Now we cannot take out properties which we didn't define before. It's going to shout at us, name2 is declared, but its value is never read. Property name too does not exist on type, which is the beauty of TypeScript. So let's take it out. Very good. We are able to accept a couple of properties. Most of them actually are optional. Only the name is needed, that must be provided. That's why this is not shouting at us. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to use all of this. So firstly, we want to be able to assign the value of this input to be whatever is coming in as the value. We want to be able to assign the unchanged function of this input to whatever is coming in as the unchanged. I think it's capital C. And we want to be able to assign the onKey down to whatever is coming in as the onKey down. We want the type to be the type of whatever is coming in. So if we don't pass in a type, then it's going to take this default. And then we want the placeholder to be that, enter name. We want the class name to be this. We also want the disabled to be whatever is coming in as a disabled. So if nothing comes in, then it's going to be false, which is not going to disable the input. So now how do we reuse? You want to hit Option Z to enable wrapping, okay, so that we don't have to scroll horizontally. Or you could just go here and wrap, and you can see the shortcuts of everything that you can reuse here. Very good. Now if we're taking any custom class name property, how do we reuse it here? So we should customize this class name to be able to take in the square brackets. So JavaScript or React here always uses the square bracket if you want to put in some JavaScript code inside of your HTML. So let's paste it. So this gives us the opportunity to put a space here and put the class name. So whatever class name is, in case you pass it, it's just going to put it inside to this other class name as additional style, because some inputs might have additional styles to customize them further. Okay, save. And now let's go to our login page. So currently here, we want to create several inputs. We only want email. So we want a name email and type email. You see, if we do control space, you can see all the properties that we can currently take in, and you see the question mark which says it is optional. This is again still the beauty of TypeScript. And if you pass in something that doesn't exist, for example that, it's going to give you an error. All right, and you should note here that on the normal React this doesn't happen, which simply leaves us in an ocean of errors. So you can have errors anytime, but building with TypeScript is more secure and it's easy to debug as well. So we want a name email type email, and we want a name password type password. The types of inputs, okay, type password. The reason why we're doing type password here is we don't want to write and see our password. We want it to show as it is currently, but here we want to show that one. Very good. So currently I'm just going to duplicate this one. So this one, the name will be confirm password, confirm dash password. The type will be password as well. Save. It's gonna look like this. Very good. So now our input component is pretty much reusable, okay, even though we're not doing much with it. What we want to do lastly before we close this session of our class is we don't want to put any business logic or any component logic inside of our pages, okay? At least we don't want to put much. So we're going to need to write a lot of logic here in order to customize this specific login page to work both for registration and login. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a login component here. Login.tsx, and let's do const login return. Actually, we're going to return, let's go here, let's cut this part and put it here, and I'm gonna export default login, save it. Now we need to import the input. Very good, save. And in the login page, we just want to put the login and delete the input here because we don't need it any longer. Save, delete this one. Very good, it is looking cleaner now. Now save as well. If we come in here, refresh it, everything is still looking pretty good. So in our next lesson, we are going to go ahead with the login to start writing some code logic here on some states. See you on in the next one, superhero. Hey. All right, now we were able to create our custom input component. Now looking at our design, setting our eyes on our design again, you see that we need buttons as well. And you can see that we're pretty much reusing these buttons everywhere. We don't want to keep designing them. So we are going to create a custom button component as well. So let's go here in our components. We're going to create button, .tsx. So if you do Typescript, you can see here that you can quickly create a Typescript React arrow function component, tsrafc. So this is going to give you this basic structure. All right. If we do tsc, we want the export one where it's able to export it as well. Very good. No, we don't want this state. Actually, Typescript functional component export. Very good. Now we want to rename this type to be button props. So let's say button props. So before we start receiving inputs here, let's create a basic button. It's going to look like this. And let's say button. Let's give it some styles. So we want py2 padding on the y-axis, or vertical padding, and px to be 9. And then we want rounded full. Rounded full simply is border radius, which is like 50% of the button. And then we want text white. We want border 2, and then border white. We save that. Now in our login, I'm going to close this input. Let's import button here. Save it. Go in here. This is how our button looks like currently. Now looking at our design, we have some colors that we always reuse, that we already put it in the configuration here. This is my blue and my pink. So how do we access them? So if we go to our button tsx here, now what we want is, if we just give bg, very good. You see our Tailwind intelligence is pretty much working now. So if we say bg my pink, you see this, my blue, my pink is coming up because we have it in our Tailwind again. So So if you add more colors here, then more custom colors, you're going to see them. So save that and then come on here. It's gonna look like this. Oh, the text is not white. Oh, see, you probably saw that. Save, and yeah, it's going to look like this. But we want to create a single button component that can be blue, can be, what's this color? Pink. Yeah, it can be pink as well. Okay, and we want to receive a couple of properties as a button. We want to receive a custom text. We don't just want it to be button. All right, we want to receive text here. We want to receive like an additional style. This one is optional, so for buttons that need more styling, we want to receive a secondary boolean in case it's a secondary button. We want to receive a function on click, which is taking no input and is returning void or returning nothing. We want to receive a loading property here so that we can put our loading indicator. Now let's receive all of them in our input. Very good. Receive a class name, secondary text. We could put the default text here to just be button as well. Okay, so we could make this optional. So if there's nothing there, it's just going to show button. And we also want the loading to be initially false. Very good. So how do we use these properties in our buttons? Now we cannot add this in here. You know, we can't add JavaScript in these double quotes. So I'm just gonna cut this part out and then put the curly brackets with the tick notation, the back tick. So we have the py2, pux9, rounded full, text white, border 2, border white. So what we want to do is we want to give a hover state. Okay, we don't want it to be defaultly pink, so we want that when you hover on here, it should go to bg my pink. And we want a transition all here. Option Z again to wrap it, or you can still go to the view and wrap, word wrap. This transition property, if you hover on it, that's one thing you always want to do again with Tailwind. Once you install the Tailwind extension, you can hover and see what it is. The rounded full will give you the border radius, that the text white is gonna give you that color. Transition is going to do all of this. Transition property, all, transition duration, that, which is putting some kind of animation on the button. Okay, and the transition we're doing here is on the hovering, so it's gonna do some kind of delay and then give it a duration to come up. So let's have the transition all, and then when we hover again, we want to give it a drop shadow large. Hovering on that, you see the drop shadow. Now this is where the custom code comes in. If it's secondary, this is a boolean. So if it's a secondary button, then we want the bg to be pink instead, or else we want it to be blue. So if it's a secondary button, it should be pink, or else it should be blue. Very good. And also we want to be able to inject the class here, an extra class name property. So let's save that for now. Then the text here should be the text. Uses the curly brackets and you pass in the variable. So how do we reuse this in our thing? If we don't pass in anything, we just duplicate this save it, you would see it's always this, and you can see the border white. It's looking really neat. And go in here, we can pass in a text, log in here. Same thing for this one. You can say text register, and then we can say this one should be a secondary button. Save it, and this is how it's going to look. Very good, which is pretty good. And you can see the drop shadow, it's looking really neat. And the best one of all is responsive. So this is normally what you would do, okay, in your production. You always want to be neat and write clean code. You see how responsive it is. Very good. Now let's save that. So first of all, we want our button to also be able to take in a loading property, okay, which it is actually taking it. But how do we use it? If a button is loading, how do we show that button? How do we show the loading indicator? We just want to show it at the site, okay? And we're going to create a component called spinner, custom spinner, okay? So for our spinner, we're gonna do Typescript functional component export. Bam, very good. Now I'm just gonna let it be as it is for now, okay? Now let's use it in the button. What we want it to do here is, first, if it's loading here, curly bracket, if loading is true. Oh, before we do the loading property, we also want to use the onClick. So the onClick is going to be whatever the onClick is. Very good. Now if it's loading, we want to use the and we want to import the spinner here. Very good. This and property is only going to display this if this is true. So we don't want to use the ternary here because we don't want to do anything. We don't want it to be like that. We don't just want to put space here, okay? So we just want it to show only when the loading is true. Save it. So if we say maybe this button is loading, save, it's going to show like this. So first off, let's fix our spinner component. So we want this to be a div and nothing in between. Actually, we just want to give it a class name. We want the border to be 2. We want the border top, border T to be my blue, and then want the width to be 5 and the height to be 5. Now if you hover on the width 5, it says it's 1.2 rem, which is 20 pixel. All right, and we want the rounded to be full. Save it. It's currently looking like that. Now it's not rotating, so we want to put some animation here. All right, now if you go to Tailwind, when it concerns animation, you just want to search animation. So this is what you're going to do normally in your development. You always want to research, implement, research, implement, and that's what I'm going to show you here. So you can see various animations: spin, ping. If we choose the spin here, you just want to do animate spin. All right, so let's do animate spin. Save it. Let's go here. It's very good, looking good, but the button is kind of weird. We want this text and the animation to be on a row, so we have to apply flex to it. So in the button, the custom button component here, we want to do flex Save it. Very good. We want to center it, so we want to do justify center. Save. Looking good, but we want some spacing between the two of them. We could either give a gap here, but for buttons that don't have the spinner, it's going to affect them. Let me see. If we do gap 5, it actually works. Okay. So let's reduce that to 3 though. Yep, so this is how it should look like if it's loading. Very good. So our button is pretty much complete as a reusable component. So if we just say loading here as well, that's how it's going to look like. Oh, one thing though, we don't want our cursor to look like that. We don't want it to look clickable when it's loading. So we want to set our disabled property. We want to say the button should be disabled only if it's loading. So if loading is true, then disabled will be true. Save it. It is disabled and the cursor is no longer looking as a pointer, but we want it to be better. So we want to say, let's inject here. Let's see, if loading is true, then do this style. Do the cursor wait. Very good. So you see the cursor is waiting until the button is no longer loading. This is how we want it to look like. Very good. That brought us to the completion of our button component. Now we are going to end here. See you in the next lesson, superhero. Alright, you're welcome onto this lesson. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to put a background here. Okay, so we want to be able to put the gradient. If we go to our design, you see that gradient, and if you look closely, there's a background at the back as well, and there's a gradient on top of it. So let's deal with the gradient first. So in our login page here, the way we are going to do this is we are going to have 2 items on top of each other. If we just go to our design, let me show you what I mean. We're gonna have this background with the gradient, and then we're going to have another one under it with the image, basically. Okay, so we're just gonna have like the image at the bottom and then another div. Let me see if I can try to I'll just put this gradient, take this one. So for this color, we want it to be maybe blue. Yep. For this one, we want it to be very good. And then we want to reduce this opacity. That's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a background image and then put the item, the element with the opacity on top of it, and then now we have the white form on top of it as well. Very good. So let's delete that. Go here. So in the login page, I'm gonna create a div, and I want it to be height full, width full, and then since we don't have to put anything inside of it, we could just self-close it. Height full, width full. Let me see. Now we want to put a gradient with Tailwind. We could say bg gradient, control space is gonna help us. We want gradient to the right. So you can see to top, we just want to R here. And then we want a bg gradient to the right. If you hover, it's going to say background image, which is a linear gradient to the right. Now we want to specify the colors. We want to say from my blue to my pink, and if we save that, okay, this is what we want, but we want this to be absolute. Okay, so we're going to say absolute positioning is going to make it not be able to influence the items around it. Okay, and we can position, once we do the absolute, we have the ability to do an offset. For example, we could say top 0, which is what we want. Save. Now it's on top of our box. We want to give it a negative Z index. Now it's below the box. So let's take out this initial background color. Very good. Now it is like this, but it's currently not having that opacity, so we're not able to see what's behind it. But now we have nothing behind it, so let's put an image behind it. Now before we're able to put an image behind it, let's check our Tailwind background image. If we click on customize your theme, click here. So with the background image, normally you could just do like BG gradient. No, not this one actually. No, this is the gradient part. Anyways, yes, you could do something like this. You can do BG and then you can put a custom URL here. All right, this is going to work if we do it. Let me show you. I'll just get any image. Actually, right click, come on, copy image address, go here. I'm just gonna do BG with the square, paste it on, save, and there you go. You're gonna see the background color. But again, looking at our design, you can see that we have this background color in many places. All right, we have it in our input and we have it here as well. So we want it to be customizable. That's why we're going to go with the custom background. So looking at this one, we can add a property inside the extend and then give it a name and then just put the image on there, so that if we want to reuse it, we could just say BG hero pattern. Okay, that's exactly what we're going to do. I'll just Control Z here, or Command Z, and then if we go to our Tailwind config, we're just gonna paste this one, background image. Very good, exactly like that. And then we want to just say pattern, and then we're going to put this link here. If we click on it, it is this simple background. Very good. And close this one. Now how do we reuse it? To reuse it or to use this, I'm just going to create another property, div dot here. We're going to give it h full with full again, and we're going to say absolute to, and we're going to say BG pattern. Now let's do self-closing, save it. Very good. It's currently on top of everything, so let's give it a negative Z index that's lower than this, so that it can go behind this one as well. Okay, so we could say minus Z10. So normally if you just say Z10, it's going to give it a positive Z index. If we put a negative in front, it's going to give it a Z index of negative 10. it's pretty much the same. Okay, in the padding, if you say P6 or P5, it's going to give P5, but we say minus P5, it's going to give a negative padding, which doesn't make sense. But we could do that for margin. We could say minus M here. Hovering is going to give us a negative margin. Very good. So that's how we give negative numbers. Save that. We want it to be absolute. It is, and we want to give it an offset. Top 0. Sticking to the top. Refresh it. Oh, we don't want 10 actually. Let's do 20, so it's lesser than this. Very good. Now it is behind, but we're not able to see it. That's because this one at the top doesn't have an opacity. So let's give it an opacity of 70, which is like 0.7. Very good. It brings us to this. Now everything is perfect, but it's just not functional. We don't have the register and the login working. So this is pretty good on every device. As we go, we just make it responsive as well, and you can see how easy it is to do this, right? If you're doing this with normal CSS, that would be very time consuming, even if you're trying to do this with Bootstrap as well. I don't know, I don't like Bootstrap, but it's not very customizable, though it is achievable to do this. Okay, so but you yourself, you can testify with me that this one is easier. Very good. Now in our next lesson, we are going to work on making this functional, where we're able to switch in between logging in and registering. All right, so see you on in the next lesson, superhero. All right, very good. So we ended here. Before we move on, I want us to align this properly. If you notice, you see the loader is kind of a bit up. It's not properly aligned vertically with the same login, and same thing with the register as well. So we want the loader and the text to be on the same vertical location, all right, or the same vertical point. So if we go to the button here, we want to say items center. This is like saying, if you hover on here, it's like saying align items center. Let's save it and let's go back. Very good. You see it shifted downward a bit. Nice. So this is very good. We want to be able to reuse this form for both the register and the login, and we want to be able to switch as well. Okay, so if we click on this, before we do that, let's take out the loading property here. Let's take out this loading and this one for now. Yeah, so before we are able to reuse this to be able to switch in between register and login, we need to use what we call state. Okay, React states, or you could say state variables. This is where we bring in hooks. Now in React, a hook is basically a function that carries out a specific task, and we have different types of hooks. One of the most useful one is the use state. We also have the use effect and use rev and many others. Okay, and you can also create a custom hook as well. So basically anything that starts with use in React is a hook. Now concerning use state, let's go ahead and import it here. Use state, it's a specific kind of hook used to manage your state, and it's basically a variable. And this is how you create a state variable. You say const, open your square brackets to the structure, the name of the variable. So what we want to do here is we want to do login and set login, So we want to be able to know if the user is logged in or not, to store the login state here. So in here, you can pass in the initial value. It could be a text, it could be an array of many things, it could be an object, it could be a Boolean value, it could be a number. So we're going to use a Boolean value. And the reason why we're using a Boolean value here is because we only have two states, right? Login and register. So if we're saying login here, we want to be able to switch from login to register. So if it is true, then we should be able to log in. If it is false, then we should be able to register. Very good. So with this in mind, the very first thing we want to do, or basically before we go on there, let me tell you the difference between this state variable and a normal variable that you could have created with this. Okay, I'll just put this number 2. The difference between these two is that first, this one is a state variable created from the useState hook. This is a normal JavaScript variable, and the way React works is it's going to keep watch of a state variable. When it changes, then it's going to update or change the UI. Okay, that's the main difference. But when this changes, it's not reflected on the user interface because React doesn't keep watch of it automatically. So the way you can update this, in case you did let here, you can just say login to equal false. If this changes, React will not know. But the way you can update this, you don't update it directly like this, like saying login equal false. You rather use this function to update the value of this variable. So login is the variable and set login is the function used to update the variable. So if we say set login to false, then this variable will become false. So if you just call this in a function, then it's going to change this variable. All right, you get used to it as we go. So let's create this state variable called login, and when we click on register here, we want to be able to first change this text to register, and then when we click again, we want to change it back to login. But now let's reflect the user interface based on the current login variable state. So in login in, we only want the email and the password to show. All right, so we want to conditionally render some input elements here. We only want this two to show when we want to log in, and we want to confirm password to add on to it if we are registering. All right, so the way we could do this is we can hide this one, or better still, we could only show this one when the login is false. This is called conditional rendering. Now we want to input JavaScript into our JSX here, so we need the curly brackets. How do we know if login is false? We use the not login. It's gonna know that it's false. If the login is false, then you want to show this. Simply means we're registering. Paste it on here, and we're using the AND operator here to only render this when this is true. So this is going to be true if login is false, right? Because login here is currently true, and then the not of true will be false, so it's not going to render this input. I hope you don't get confused here. So the reason why this will be true is all of this expression, the not and the login, will only be true if the login is false, because basically what the not does is it flips it. So if login is false, then it's gonna flip it to true. If login is true, then it's gonna flip it to false. So all of this expression will be true when the login is false, and when the login is false, it's gonna flip it to true, and thereby rendering this. And you know what it means for the login to be false? It means we're registering. So That simply means we want to be able to show this when we're registering. Save that. If we check here, very good, we only have this. But now we don't have any function, or we don't have anything that's going to switch that login state variable to false. So remember, the way we switch this value is by calling this function, and we want to call this function when you click on this. So if you click on register, simply means you want to register. Very good. So the way we're going to do is we're going to put an onClick event here. So onClick, and then we want to do a couple of things, but before that, you want to know that React has what we call events. Events are actions that occur at like certain point in time. For example, you have an onClick event, you have a hover event. You can do something when something happens. Okay, very good. So when we click here, we want to set login to false. So we wanna put a function here, arrow function actually. I want to say set login to false. Very good. Save. Now if we go here, and then when we click on this, bam, now you notice that the login has switched to false. That's why we can now see the password. We also want the title to switch as well. We want the title to rather show register. So we're going to conditionally render it as well. So we use the curly brackets again. We want to say if login is true, so if we're currently in the login state, you want to show login, or else register. If login is true, login, or else register. Save that, and let's try it again. Refresh first. It's initially true, so we have the login state. When you click on here, bam, it's on the register state as well. Very good. Now in this state, we also want a switch in the buttons as well. We want to see register here as well, and then we rather want to see login down here, so that if we then click on this login, it's going to switch back into register. Now we have to conditionally render the buttons in the same way we did with this. Not actually in the same way, but we're going to do something like this. We're going to do it in the same way as we did for the login. So if we log in, or if login is true, then we want to render these buttons. Just cut it. Actually, I'll just hit enter to go to the next line. Paste it here. But the thing is, React only allows us to have a single parent. Okay, like you see this return here, we can only return a single parent having many children. If you try to return another child here, it's gonna give you an error. So Command Z or Control Z, if you hover on here as well, it's going to say JSX expression must have one parent element. So we want to wrap this, Control Z again, we want to wrap this on what we call a React fragment that's going to serve as a false parent, or as a parent without a tag. Paste it, and now it works. Very good. But then here, which is after this, we want an else or a column. We want to render a next couple of buttons, but we have to put it in the fragment again. So when you save, your prettier is going to format the code so that you can see it better. So you see this parent is holding that, and this is holding this. So if the login is true, so if we're currently in the login state, we want to show the main button to show login, and the secondary button should show register. Or else, which simply means if we're in a register state, then we want this to show register instead, and then we want this one to show login. And when we click on the login, we want to switch back to the login, so we want to switch back to true. Save it, come on back here, refresh it. Now if we switch register, very good. Now we can click back to login, back to register, back to login, and very good. So we're able to switch between the login and the register state. Now that simply means we can go ahead to start collecting our input information from the fields. So see you on in the next lesson, superhero. Alright, very good. So let's collect the input from the various fields. And the way we're going to collect it is to use the state variable as well. So we're basically going to map each field to a specific state variable and then collect the input value each time you add a text. So as you click on it, it should update it automatically using an event called onChange. So each time you add a character here, an onChange event is emitted. And what we want to do if that event is emitted is we want to set the current state variable assigned to this field to update its value to the current value that's here. Now if we go back, that simply means we're going to create the email password, confirm password as well. So if we say use state, let's use the snippet here, click on it, then you want to call the first one email, hit tab, and the cursor is going to move. Let's just do an empty string for the default. Let's do it again, use state, click on the snippet here, we want the password, then hit tab, and then your cursor is going to move to here, and then do empty field. Let's do the same again for the confirm password. Confirm password, hit tab, empty, and very good. Now we have this 3, we want to map it to this field, and the way we do that is if we go to the input, by the way, I'll close the button and the spinner and Tailwind, close the app, close the index. Let's not have much. Open the input here. You see that the input is taking in value and an onChange here. Value is always going to hold the value of the input field, and that's how we can put it here. The onChange is always going to hold the function that's called when the input value changes. So you would always work with the value and the onChange event. All right, so we just want to map it. So this is going to be the value. So here we want to pass down the value. The value is going to be email, and then onChange. What we want to do when the value of this input field changes is we want to update this email with this input's current value. And when an onChange event happens, then an event is emitted. You could call it event, you could call it E, but it depends on you. So what we want to do is we want to console log E here, save it, and this is how it looks like. So this is arrow functions. You should be used to this if you've done React before. But if you want to do with the function keyword, this is how it's going to look like. Function, and yeah, like this. And then you want to take in maybe event, or you can call it E, and console log event. So this is how it's going to look like if you're using the function keyword. But you can see that this is like twisted together and less readable, so let's not use that. So for now, anytime the value changes, this event will be called, and basically what we're doing is just console logging the event that's emitted. So let's save it and let's see what that's going to give us. Open the inspect here, console, clear it. So click on here, start typing. So you see that an event is emitted here, but you don't see the value here though. That's because this value here for the email is constantly empty. So you're just strictly putting that value to empty. The way this value would change is if you update it with the function here, which you're going to see in the moment. That's why I said this value will always work hand in hand with the onChange, okay, as you go on in React. So let's inspect this. If we open it, you want to find, you have a lot of properties here that you can use, but the important one here is the target. So you want to do this event.target, and then you see the value here. It's currently empty. So that's how you can access the value of this input. So you can say e.target.value, but then we don't want to console log it. We want to set email. So doing this would update this email, which would reflect on the value. So you can see the elements that are typed into the input field. Save that. If we go back, let's make sure it's no, and then type it. Very good. So now you see this is coming out as Desmond, and in the background it is actually updating this element here. So that's how we can map a state variable to an input using this value and onChange. So you should just keep this in mind, because that's what you're always going to do. You would always do this. Now let's do the same thing for password. So I'll just copy this value here, paste it. Now the value should be password, and each time we want to set password. Let's also paste the same thing for the input, confirm password, confirm password, and set confirm password. Save that. A component changing and uncontrolled. Let me see. Okay, you can just ignore that for now. Alright, yeah. Okay, it's actually gone. Okay, now we are able to get the values, though you currently aren't seeing it. I'll just put this to 100%. We are able to get the value. What we want to do here is we want to add an event listener on the login, okay, and on this register blue here as well, so that when you write your email here and then click on login, it should just console log the current values. So we want to create a function in here inside of this component. Before the return, we want to create a function here. Actually, we want to create two functions, the handle sign in and the handle sign up. Handle sign up const. So let's arrow function, duplicate it, and call this one sign in. Very good. Now when you click on the sign up, we just want to create a data. When you're signing up, that's registering, you want to keep track of the email, password, and confirm password. Then I'm going to copy this, paste it here. When you're signing in, which is logging in, we only have two fields, email and password. Delete this. So we just want to console log it here so that we see their value. save it, and then add the event. So for logging in, we want to add the event here. And click, and say handle sign in. Now the reason why we're not putting the arrow function here and doing this is because this doesn't take in any input. All right, if you take a look at this, all of this, we had to pass in an input in the set here, so we couldn't just call set login as is, like so, without passing it anything. We needed to pass it an input. Now if you're not passing an input, like this would still work, okay? But if you're not passing an input, you can still just do it like this. Just put the name of the function and it's going to automatically call it. And let's do the same for registering here. So on click, you want to handle sign up instead. Save that, and basically what these functions are doing is console logging the corresponding data. If we go back here, just refresh it, and let's see, open this one. If you click this, bam, it's gonna give you those two values. You see here, we're console logging these variables, which are the state variables, and you can see that they have the updated value, right? What we put in the field, that's because we mapped the value to those state variables. So each time you update this, it's going to be updated as well. Very good. Same thing for the register. If we add in this here and then click on register, you're going to see the confirm password 123, email, and the password. Very good. So let's refresh this. Now we are getting the input values from the corresponding fields. What we want to do now is to be able to submit it to the backend, to Firebase, for logging in or maybe registering. But before we do that, we're going to handle the routing in the next lesson. So see you on in the next one, superhero.